Blessed be everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are talking about the 5 common mistakes that beginner witches make. And I've also got a bonus 6th mistake, which is actually probably the number 1 mistake. So I'm leaving that one till last. But before we go into that, I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com, author of Crafting Your Wiccan Path. If you want to know more about Wicca and witchcraft, tarot, shadow work, magic, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any videos. If you want to know where to start your witchcraft practice, you're just feeling confused by all the practices out there, I have a free video. It's called How to Start Your Witchcraft Practice. There's a link in the description field below this video, and that will give you an idea of what witches do and how you can pace yourself through your learning curve through the first 12 months of learning the craft. Today will help you though if you are new to the craft, or even if you're not that new to the craft, you've probably come across this yourself. And these are some mistakes that people make when they first start practicing witchcraft. Now there's a number of different mistakes when it comes to practicing magic. These just seem to be the ones that are most common. None of these are in order of importance either, or in order of, how often they happen. They're just the most common issues that beginners make, and I've certainly fallen into these mistakes myself in the very, very early days of my training. So the first one I wanted to talk about is relying too heavily on the tools and on the ingredients. When you look at a lot of spells, particularly in some of the older books and some traditional witchcraft texts and different cultures, there's often a lot of different herbs and tools and things that you have to obtain. And while those things are useful and correspond to your intent and can help power up your magic, they're not absolutely necessary. And we know that now because of other experimentation that has been done by people such as Lynn McTaggart, for example, where they've found that the magic is really in us. We are the magic. And it's our ability to be able to feel into the result of our magic that really makes our magic work. So the tools, like all of the different herbs and the crystals and the colors and the candles, help us. They certainly help us put us in the right psychological framework. They can put us into the feeling place. They can help us feel magical and tune into our magical selves. And they can energetically correspond also to our desire. They aren't 100% necessary for spell success. A lot of people have success with magic without using much in the way of tools and ingredients, and I've certainly had experience of that myself. I've found that it's more the psychological effect that the tools and ingredients have on me that actually determines the outcome for me of my magic. And if you don't have all of the tools that a spell requires of you, then you can still do the spell anyway. Just make sure that you're really feeling into the end result as if it's already happened. And if you are substituting different herbs, that you know what those herbs are that you're substituting and how they as well correspond to your desire and how they also help you in the way that you feel. So don't think you have to spend lots of money on tools and ingredients. They're aids, they're helpful, but they won't make or break your magic, really. And that's something I personally have found to be the case. Number 2, neglecting basic principles or just going into magic without really learning anything to start off with. So just sort of dabbling in the craft. A lot of people like to dabble with things such as Ouija boards, for example, and look, these things you can end up with things you don't want when you dabble with magic, particularly if you're working with spirits. You can end up with unwanted spirits and not knowing how to get them to move on, essentially. So that's one of the areas of magic that you really need to understand some basics about and have caution about. Doing spell work, there is still caution with that because your intent matters. What you want to have happen matters. And you want to be aware of your intent and the outcome that that intent could have. So it's important to understand the basics there. It's important to understand why we use certain herbs, why we use certain colors. Again, because if you're neglecting understanding that, you could be spending a fortune on spell materials that you don't necessarily need for your spell work. And you can be doing magic even all wrong. Like you may just think that, okay, I've got the yellow candle and I've got the 3 different herbs and I'm lighting the candle and that's the magic. And that's not the magic. The magic is in you. It's not in the candle. It's not in the herbs. So just doing a spell that you see in a book or on YouTube or TikTok without understanding the mechanics of spell casting could actually mean that your magic doesn't work, that it doesn't do anything because you haven't actually done it correctly. So do understand the basics of spell casting and do understand the basics of magic and witchcraft in general. Don't just go into it thinking that it's so easy that you don't need to know anything about it. Another issue that some people have at the beginning is kind of the opposite of that. And this is one that I've just added myself to this again because it got me thinking that sometimes people won't attempt to do any magic or any ritual because they're afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid of practicing because they haven't done it before and they're too scared to do anything in case they do it wrong. That's a mistake as well. You need to be doing things in order to learn how to do them, after all. So if you are seeing things in spell books, you have read a little bit about magic, you understand the mechanics of how it works, then yeah, give it a go. Give the spell a go. Give the ritual a go. Don't just not do it because you're afraid of doing it wrong. So that's kind of associated with point number 2. Either you're neglecting the basics and just going for it, or you're going the opposite direction and not actually doing anything because you're afraid of making mistakes. Number 3 is similar to number 2 in that you're not allowing yourself the time to learn. You're not allowing yourself the time and the discipline to do your research and to do your practicing. Witchcraft is a practice, so you need to practice it. And that doesn't mean practicing spellcrafting every day. It also means practicing energy work, for example, doing meditation and learning to use your senses, particularly visualization. Learning how to live within the wish fulfilled so that when you're doing your magic, you are able to feel into the desire as if it's already happened. Learning those things, researching it, understanding it, and that does take research and understanding and learning. You're not going to know it all right from the beginning, so do learn, and learn. Another one that I find often happens, particularly when it comes to love magic, is forgetting the ethical aspects or ethical consideration of your magic. As I said earlier, you're doing things with your intent that can quite likely have an outcome. And of course, it depends on the other person's energy as to how much it will affect them. But if you're doing magic to harm people, it's going to have an effect. And we also know this from research that Lynn McTaggart has done, that any intention that you do put out into the universe does actually have an effect of also affecting those who put it out as well. So unless you really know how to protect yourself against your intent coming back at you, be very, very aware that your intent is also going to affect you. And it's not just because of ethical reasons, it's also because of just the way things work. If you're so full of resentment and anger and hatred towards something that somebody's done, that you want them to suffer, that you want them to, have a terrible time or something, then you're putting yourself in that energy of hatred, frustration, resentment. You have to put yourself in that energy in order to do the magic. And that's harming you. Being in the anger, being in resentment, being in that kind of energy is harmful, particularly if you're in it for a long period of time. It's much better to do the shadow work and learn how to really understand emotions, where they really come from, and how to move through things, than it is to be sitting in that energy and then doing magic from that energy, because it will have an effect on you over time. You may not notice it straight away, but what you may notice is that the more you focus on those feelings of resentment and anger and hatred, the more events are going to happen to you that create those feelings of anger and resentment and hatred. It's like you're attracting that which you feel to you. And when we do magic, we're trying to attract that which we want to us, and hopefully they're positive things that uplift us and energize us, not things that are actually going to create more anger, more hatred, and more resentment. So even if you don't want to get ethical, even if you have that belief that, everybody's got their own limit and you shouldn't be preaching things like that about ethics, it has a negative effect on you if you indulge in it. It really does over time. And you'll notice that effect if you keep indulging in that energy. So there's ethical considerations there to consider as well. Another one is magic works in its own time. It's not going to work an hour from now necessarily. Sometimes it does. Other times it may take a lot longer for the magic to work. It really does work in its own time. And I know I've heard other magical practitioners talk about, having a time frame for your magic. I've personally found that there is no time when it comes to magic. It's almost like, if you understand, I guess, from a quantum perspective, the linear time model that we work with here in 3D reality isn't actually how it works anyway. And so something can happen straight away. Something can happen before you've even done the magic. You can get a result. Other times it could take weeks or months or even years for the magic to work. It really depends on a lot of factors lining up, including your own psychology, your own belief that you have the capacity to have that thing or experience that situation in order for the magic to work. So if it doesn't work straight away, don't think that it hasn't worked and give up. Keep living in the wish fulfilled, because it will come eventually. And the more that you're able to live within the wish fulfilled, the faster it will come. A lot of the time we're stepping in our own way when it comes to magic. And if we just got out of our own way, it would work a lot faster. Also, things have to line up. People have to line up. Situations have to line up. Events have to line up. And sometimes they can't line up straight away. Magic will usually take the easiest route to come into physical manifestation. So the pathway for the magic to come into physical has to be there. So if it's not there, it has to happen. It has to come into being. And this is what we talk about with the sphere of availability. If what you're doing a spell for isn't in your sphere of availability yet, it has to come into your sphere of availability. And sometimes that means that you may have to plan your magic a little bit more strategically and do smaller spells to work your way to a larger result. So you may have a big plan of, having a certain lifestyle, but you're way away from that right now. So maybe you need to work with smaller goals and work your way up to that bigger lifestyle, for example. That's a way that you can work with magic where you're getting results a lot sooner than if you're just doing this one big thing and you're waiting for it to happen and it's just not happening because it can't find a way in at this stage where you are. It's not in your sphere of availability. The main thing, though, which is the one that I wanted to mention at the end because it is a big thing, is that there's a misconception that magic is the solution to every problem that you have. To the extent where sometimes people will forego conventional means that actually could help them. Magic works through the physical reality. It works through this 3D reality. So it needs to have 3D to work through. So if you are thinking that all you have to do is do a spell and something's going to happen, that is really being quite naive to how magic can work, because it might need you to do something in order for it to be able to do the magic or come to you. For example, healing is probably the one where this is the most common. People will just do magic for an ailment without actually doing anything else to help their situation. And what the magic's more likely going to do is bring you in contact with somebody or something that's going to help you. And so you have to understand that magic can work that way. It isn't that the magic is going to actually directly all of a sudden magically heal you. You may actually have to go to a, proper practitioner. You may actually have to go through some sort of therapy or something in order to get the result. The magic's just bringing you to the right people, the right time and the right place, and it's lining those things up for you. Sometimes it will bring in miraculous healings. It really just depends on what the easiest route for the magic is. Most of the time it's going to do it in very mundane ways. Also, love magic, for example. If you want to bring the love of your life into your life, but you're not going out there and socializing and meeting new people, it's going to be very difficult for the magic to bring that person into your life. It'll take a lot longer for them to turn up. The same with money magic as well. If you're not actively doing things that open the doors to money, that are providing opportunities for money to come in on a physical level, then it's going to be very difficult for the money to actually show up for you, because it doesn't have a channel to come through. So that's the biggest thing, is magical thinking when it comes to magic. Now, all of these things can be avoided when you're learning magic, particularly if you're learning from another person. So if you're going through a coven, or you're learning from somebody, or you want to be a part of the Mystery Witch School 101 Academy, which is my course on Wicca and Witchcraft, you can avoid all of this because you've got people there to help you. You've got other people who've made the same mistakes, and you can ask questions. So if you do want to learn witchcraft with me, the Mystery Witch School 101 Academy is there for you to learn. It's a 12-month course. You get to learn month by month by month over the 12-month period. So you get to practice lots of practices. There's magic and energy work and working with deities, working with the Sabbats, working with lunar energies. It all comes to you once a month, and you have the whole month to practice these things. And what that does is it gets you practicing your craft. It gets you tuning into your witch self. There's even a meditation to guide you into connecting with your witch self, your magical self. Lots of ways to be able to get you into that zone of living a magical life and connecting with yourself and magic on a daily basis. So if you're interested in doing that and you want to walk the witch's path, the Mystery Witch School 101 Academy is there for you. There's a link in the description field below this video. If you liked the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. I am Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com. Blessed be.